I remember a situation a few years ago. I'd been asked by one of our high schools to come in to celebrate the sacrament of reconciliation with the senior high school students, and the day before they asked if I would go into the classroom and give these students some preparation. I was more than happy to do that. I remember that class. I remember asking these 17, 18-year-old young people, how many of you would consider yourself to be a sinner? How many of you are sinners? Raise your hand. Well, it was interesting. About half a dozen of the 25 or so in the class raised their hands. And I think my response probably was humour. I laughed and said, well, either this is a remarkable class of young people or you don't know what sin is. So I spent the next half hour or so explaining to them that sin was turning away from God, that sin was a settling for something that was less than the fullness of what we were created for. And I answered some of their questions. And then after the half hour, I asked them again, okay, given all of that explanation, how many of you would now say that you are sinners? I think probably a dozen, certainly not 50% of the class, but a dozen or so raised their hands. So I then decided it was time to really explain to them sin and help them to see that they were sinners in preparation for their celebration of the sacrament the following day, so that it could be a grace-filled and meaningful reception of the sacrament. So I explained to them that we are all sinners. And I explained to them too that when we think of sin, we usually just name the tip of the iceberg. I might say, I might name the things that I did wrong that I shouldn't have done, or the things that I don't do that I should have done. Usually we're just naming this visible tip. But underneath there is a mass of sinfulness. We are filled with a sinfulness that means that very often we act out in ways that surprise us, in ways that are more sinful and more harmful than we would do if we were thinking about it. That's because there's sinfulness within us, and that's all of us. So I explained this to the students, and the bell rang, the class finished, and the teacher came up to me, and I could tell the moment I saw her she was not happy. She came up to me and she said, you come in here and break down the self-esteem of these young people. We do everything we can here to build up their self-esteem, and you break it down completely. Anyhow, the conversation we had at that moment wasn't all that helpful probably, but later I was thinking about it. It was clear that this teacher was thinking that self-esteem is a human achievement, and it's not. Self-esteem is what we have when we know that we are loved. And the place where we know we are loved most is in our sinfulness. Think of a friendship, a relationship with a friend. If I'm doing everything that they want, then there's not necessarily a love, because I'm simply acting in a way that they like. There's an attraction, but not necessarily love. The real test of the friendship comes when I know that I have done something that's harmful in the relationship or to the other person, and I go to them with uncertainty and own up to it and admit it. Then, if they respond with love and forgiveness and acceptance, then I really know that I'm loved. Then I really have self-esteem. It's important in this season of Lent and every moment of every day that we know we are sinners. Because for the Christian, our sinfulness, when we acknowledge it to God, becomes our capacity for God's love, for God's healing, for God's forgiveness.